God, I wanted to ask you, did you see, because I know that you're a fan of Vaush, did you see that clip of him on his stream a couple weeks ago saying that he doesn't see a logical argument for child porn being illegal?
I've said that before. I've said that for years.
Tom.
We've had this conversation before. There, okay, the all like pedophilia stuff. It's not logical. That doesn't mean that we can't say it's not wrong or that it's not immoral, but it's not logical. You can't. So, okay, let me ask you just a couple questions. Um, you think child pornography is probably wrong because they're not old enough to consent. They're not mature enough to consent to something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Say we all agree that a child actually is mature enough to consent. They're like 6 years old, right? We all agree they're definitely mature enough. Do you change your mind on that?
No.
Okay, exactly. Exactly. That's my point. It's not as simple as we don't think they're mature enough because we don't know. We make up an arbitrary age, 18, and just say, hey, like hopefully they're mature enough by then. Like I don't know. Some kids are going to be mature enough by 12, some aren't going to be mature enough their entire lives. But we'll throw an arbitrary age out there and say, okay, 18 is the age limit. That's where we're going to set it and just kind of hope for the best. That's what we do. It's not logical. It is arbitrary.
I would agree with that. But, like,
The way you said that. Okay, I guess.
um, but, like, what if, because, like, personally, I take issue with where we draw those lines because they aren't, like, they really don't make any sense. Why was 18 the magical number? You know, the human brain doesn't fully develop until age of 25.
25, yep.
So I would be interested to know the logic behind why we chose 18 for being the age of
I'm
legality or why we chose 21 for being the legal age of drinking. Like,
mhm,
because to me, that defies all logic anyway.
mhm,
And I think
yep.
that there is still predatory behavior, whether it's illegal or not is not truly the issue. I do believe that there is a lot of predatory behavior, particularly on young women between the ages of 18 and 25, a lot. Like I think that women between these ages experience a lot of predatory behavior that even though it's not illegal, it's still disgusting and creepy.
you know,
What?
my last girlfriend's like 11 years younger than me.
Okay.
I was 28. I didn't know that, or I was 29, about to turn 29. I didn't know that she had just turned 18. I just assumed she was older than that for the longest time. She worked for me for a while. Eventually, she moved away. When she moved away, we started talking. And then after we were already like kind of in the midst of everything, I find out she's 18, just turned 18. Um, and I I almost like broke things off right then because I said I was like I'm gonna be looked at as a freaking creep here. Like this is obviously gonna be looked at as predatory behavior. I'm older, more mature. Um, and I'm not gonna lie and say she was super mature. She wasn't. I'm not. I I'm but I loved her and like we loved each other and we looked out for each other and I think that lots of people will look at those sorts of things and say like oh he's just older and he's kind of taking advantage of her and blah 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 and maybe that was the case. I don't know. I don't think so. I I think that um I think that we draw arbitrary lines around these things most of the time and um, if you had asked me before I met her, if you had said what's the youngest person you would date, I would probably say like maybe 2 years younger than me, probably 2 years, maybe 3 years younger than me. And then I met her, and like all of those barriers that I thought were up just came crumbling down. It changed the entire way I thought about it. So I don't know.
Well, you can maybe make the argument in regards to older teenagers, maybe about, arbitrary lines and that line starts to blur at some point, but I don't think that you can, in good faith, make that same argument for some, like a 6-year-old.
Well, no, but you just said a second ago that um, there's still predatory behavior, especially for young women or between the ages of 18 and 25.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I
So
remember
that's
whenever
what I
I
was
turned
responding to.
like I remember whenever I turned 18, it's like there was like a shift and like there were so many like guys in my life that like the minute I turned 18, like our relationship, the dynamic changed very quickly. And I was realizing that like people that had been comfortable being alone in a space with before, like I was no longer comfortable being alone in a space with them because they made me feel uncomfortable. It's like a switch flipped. I have an older brother. He was 3 grades ahead of me. And so all of his friends were around the same age as him. He graduated 3 years before I did. Um, and a lot of those relationships really, really shifted. Guys that I had known since I was like 12. Uh, and I at the time, I grew up in a very, very sheltered environment growing up in a traditional conservative home. But once I started going to college and I started reaching out to like other women my age, I realized that this isn't like an uncommon thing. A lot of women experience this behavior. So whenever I say predatory behavior, I don't just mean like older men like going after, freshly 18-year-olds. Sometimes that dynamic works for people. I'm not saying that those relationships are inherently wrong because of something like an age difference. I think that predatory behavior it comes in forms like these guys weren't that much older than me. They were still in college. But it was the fact that like I had been like a kid sister to them up until that point, and then
Oh yeah.
the relationship shifted sexually so quickly and in a way that I never consented to. Like these were people that I trusted and then I no longer felt safe with, which is,
Yeah.
in my opinion, predatory behavior.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Like I thought you meant just like women between the ages of 18 and 25 are just so naive that. Uh,
No, and I think that maturity is incredibly subjective. I mean, I grew up with so many younger siblings, and my parents had, marital problems in and out, so I was very much a surrogate parent for a lot of my younger siblings in many, many instances growing up. Learned how to do laundry and mop a floor and wash dishes at the age of 7. I was being left alone with infants by the age of 11. I grew up very, very quickly. I was rather mature for my age. Um, in comparison to other girls my age. Maturity is very much a suggestive thing that is factored by outside influences that women experience while they're growing up.
mm, um, yeah, I, I like I said, it's all very subjective, and I'm assuming I didn't see the clip that you're talking about with Vaush, but I assume that's what he's talking about when he says there's not a logical argument for it. You can make arguments for it, but they're not normally logical. And so, because we all feel there's something wrong with it and we feel like it should be immoral, we set up boundaries and laws to discourage these sorts of things from happening. But all in all, it's truly not logical in the end. Um, let's see. Oh, sorry. I keep sitting far away from my mic. There's lots of days where I'll go back and watch like a couple minutes of the stream, and I realize that I am way louder than Kay was, and so I've been trying to sit farther and farther away from the mic lately. But um, Urasama said, I see your argument, Tom, but it opens up far too much room for abuse of the naive. Now, if you want to get into whether or not it should be illegal to animate it or not, that's a different discussion. So, that is a different discussion, and that's a discussion that's being had a lot when it comes to anime, because anime girls are all they all look and act like very young girls, and they are made to be sexually attractive like preteens or something like that.
That's
And
why anime is so sexualized by
mhm,
the map community.
yep, and the and so it's a common conversation that's being had. But there's just not a simple answer to that. Like I remember having a conversation a while ago where I got hated on hardcore, where I said, I think if, say, there was child porn out there that had been like confiscated by the FBI, and doctors wanted to use that child porn on pedophiles and give it to them to see if that helped to like quell their desires, because we're starting to believe that pedophilia is more of like a medical problem, um, and so it's more of like a diagnosis.